It's 2024. I'm not coming for anybody's wig, okay? I'm really not. No, you're wrong. Are you Scott himself? You guys. Did I just solve it? Hi, I'm Nervous, and today we're going to be doing another React video. Partly because my scripts are taking a lot longer than I had planned originally, and partly because you all requested this. Not only in my last video, but on my last live stream, I had people asking if I take requests because if so, they wanted me to react to this video, and I had people asking if I was planning on doing a reaction to this. So I am here to give the people what they want. I'm really excited to watch this. Just a disclaimer, this video is over 2 hours long, so we are not going to finish it today. I'm going to react to half of it this week. We're going to do a theory next week, and then the week after that, we will come back and finish the rest of this. If I have a lot to say, it may end up being 3 parts. It really just depends on how long I ramble. We'll see what ends up happening, but my plan is for this to be a 2-part video. I don't want to waste any more time getting into this, but I just want to say this is a brand new channel and they are blowing up. They are popping off. They are doing the thing. So I'm really excited to see what they have to say, and there is construction going on outside my house. I've done everything I can to adjust my setup today to try to alleviate some of the noise, but if you still hear it, I'm so sorry. I'm doing everything that I can. This is happening in my life and I have to deal with it all the time, and it's great. Without further ado, let's get reacting.
I said to him, Orville, not every story has to have significance, you know?
Starting off with Mr. Hippo.
Find meaning in everything anyone says. You'll just drive yourself crazy. Had a friend do it once. Wasn't pretty. We talked about it for years. And then not only that, but you'll likely end up believing something you shouldn't believe.
I love Mr. Hippo.
With the release of Help Wanted 2, the new lore introduced in the game raised quite a few more questions than answers. You know, like most FNAF games.
Hey.
But in the little details of the secret ending, crucial parts of the original timeline were given, ones that we believe can help us solve the overly complicated lore of this game.
Crucial parts of the original timeline were given, and they're showing the graves, so I'm assuming they're talking about the death order
Series.
Hi, I'm Corey.
And I'm Connie.
Hi, Corey
And
and
we just
Connie.
solved FNAF.
Well,
Bold words for a first video, Corey.
Shut up. Do we know everything? No, we'd be dumb to claim that.
Yeah, for instance, we just forgot to put the shadow animatronics here. I don't know what the those are.
Yeah. But not only have we uncovered
oh, how much cursing is going to be in this video that I'm going to have to bleep out? Oh, no. Don't make extra work for me. I'll do it. I'll do it for the fans.
but revealed long-held fandom beliefs that are, when looking over everything, just plainly not true. This video is written around 2 key points and building everything up else around them. You need to understand one before you understand the other, so that we can continue theorizing in a way that actually makes progress instead of going in circles.
Oh, what a
First,
mood.
let's get some disclaimers out of the way.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, there's reading. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. Let's read this quickly. Everything we say here is indeed our speculation. We have provided evidence that we believe proves our point, but of course nothing is confirmed. Don't take our word as gospel. If you believe we got something wrong in our interpretation, that's totally valid. If you harass us or anyone else in the fan base for their own personal interpretation, this is not valid or cool. This is sandbox lore for a funny bear game. Don't take it too seriously. We presume that you know the baseline of Five Nights at Freddy's lore. If you don't, this might be a bit of a confusing listen as we jump between timelines and games constantly. The hopping between subjects may be a tad confusing if you don't already know what's going on. I apologize for that. It was the only way I could get this video shorter than 300 years. Honestly, if we went in order of how Gameverse reveals lore, we'd be here until we died. In terms of the are the books and continuity debate, we will be using the books as supporting evidence and not primary evidence. Things that are in the books can support evidence in the games, but just saying this happened because in the books there was Charlie Bots and Fazgoo isn't convincing anyone. A lot of our theories are our own, but you will see us quote several other theorists and creatives whose work will be A, cited on screen, and B, be listed in the credits and description. Understanding any part of FNAF is a group effort after all. No one person can handle this lore all at once. The power must be shared. You'll see us list Rytos probably the most. Their videos are very influential in their theorizing. Their channel is epic and you should check it out. That's crazy. Like, shout out to Rytos. That's crazy. I hope Rytos pats themselves on the back for this, despite not being, the biggest FNAF channel, they are still making some of the most influential content on the platform for other theorists. Like, kudos. I don't know. I just feel like you should be very proud of yourself. In the effort to keep this video less than a week long, we may neglect some minor details. Ask us later who we think did the bite of 87. Hashtag Mangle was framed. However, we did include what we perceive to be the most important parts of the Springtrap timeline. I hope that's it. It seems like that's it.
And number 7, we will be cussing in this video. We're not sorry.
So, insanely long
I love how I was like, oh, are you guys gonna... Yep. Just as a disclaimer, I don't think there's anything wrong with cursing. I just try not to put it on my channel for my own reasons. I curse in the real world, but not on my videos,
For an insanely long essay, our written form is 50 pages long.
Yeah, and that's on you for adding a bibliography. Let's begin.
I like their chemistry, like as how they work together on screen. It's lovely.
To begin with, first we must question when exactly Fazbear Entertainment became a corporation.
Ooh.
Prior to the release of Security Breach,
I like that they're going into that because I've wanted to make a video about the corporation, LLC, all that kind of stuff.
most fans presumed it began in the 1970s or 80s with the original Fredbear's Family Diner. However, one of the collectibles in Security Breach is a poster for the wonderful Fredbear's Singin' Show. If we can narrow down this poster to any time period, we can quickly narrow it down to the 1940s.
Nevertheless, we know at the very least that Fredbear's Family Diner began in the 1970s or early 1980s. The main time we see it is in 1983, where it seems to be an established restaurant. Here's where we enter speculation on the owners of the restaurant. We know for a fact that the co-owners of the restaurants, at the time of the missing children incident, were William Afton and Henry. They don't seem to be full owners of the franchise, which has a company behind it, but whether they started the franchise and sold it or simply joined the company to open restaurants is up to interpretation.
Also note, Henry and Charlotte's last name may not be Emily, as the
Yeah, I agree. It's not. It is a middle name of Charlotte. It is not a last name of Henry. I understand that the grave doesn't have a last name, and MatPat did this, and I will never forgive MatPat for this. Her last name is not Emily. I just don't care. I just don't care.
The name was found on her grave in the Silver Eyes, and, well, it could have easily been a middle name. In the Ultimate Guide, she's referred to as Charlotte Emily, but he's just referred to as Henry, implying it may not be a shared name. But it does exist as a surname and does mean rival, so that's what we got for now. It is very likely that their sister location, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, was also open around the same time as Fredbear's, possibly falling under Henry's jurisdiction. We know this due to the existence of Chica and Foxy toys, merchandise, and television appearances during FNAF 4, despite them not appearing at Fredbear's. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 also references a sister location that was open at the same time as Freddy's, which seems to have closed due to springlock failures. We know for a fact that the main four characters had at least been established by that point. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy. Fredbear and Spring Bonnie were also...
When you think about it, it's so interesting when you think about the amount of time the restaurants were actually open and operating, it seems very brief. What I find interesting is that they grew, but in every instance created new animatronics. Typically, what you would imagine with a franchise is a lot of locations all with the same thing, but these are like locations with completely different animatronics. The toys, and then Golden Freddy and Golden Bonnie, or, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, I guess. It's like they're different depending on which restaurant you're at. I don't know. It's just interesting to me.
Established and merchandised with the others, as we see separate Fredbear and Freddy plushies in the crying child's room, and a little kid with a Spring Bonnie finger trap in the cutscenes, who could be Charlie? That's not important.
No matter when Fredbear's was established, we know that the Freddy
I just wanted to say to Corey and Connie, when you changed from
important.
audio to
no
audio,
matter when
you put this re-record audio, sorry. You didn't ask. But I just want you to know you do not have to apologize for having to re-record stuff. It's just like something that happens, It just, you have to sometimes. I've had to re-record entire videos before, so.
When Fredbear's was established, we know that the Freddy Fazbear specific brand began in 1983. Due to novelty coins you can find, so there's that. While William seems to have handled mainly business and entertainment, Henry, meanwhile, is confirmed to have been the technician within the franchise. The Springlock suits, as any FNAF fan will tell you, are very important to understand. When creating the animatronics for their restaurants, William and Henry decided to create suits that could function as both animatronics and costumes. Ones that
Walton Files. He looked like Bomb. Look at him. That's Bomb from Walton Files if I've ever seen him. And I have. Not in real life, thank goodness. That is so funny. I'm sorry.
And costumes. Ones that could perform on stage with robotic movements, but could also be worn as outfits to mingle safely with guests. Thus, the springlock suits. With a hand crank, the inner machinery was wound back and held against the edges of the suit with the springlock mechanisms, leaving room for a human to fit
What
inside.
an absolutely
Unfortunately,
psychotic
however, the
thing.
springlocks were unreliable, to say the least.
To say
Any
the
wrong
least,
movement or
indeed.
introduction of fluids such as spilled water, tears, or blood, and the springlocks would set off, sending the endoskeleton back into place, whether or not someone was still inside.
Help.
This would cause an intense and painful death.
Ow!
While the instructions tell the employees to find somewhere quiet to bleed out, it's actually more likely that the suits would cause more internal than external bleeding. The pieces would still be in place, holding most of the blood in. However, its piercing of vital
Ew.
organs and arteries could not be understated. It would be a long and painful death. In the Silver Eyes, there is a given possibility of surviving
Why is he naked under there?
a springlocking, as William
Oh.
is stated to have done
Yeah.
so, but there isn't any mention of this in the game's universe.
Each Freddy's location was given a secret room, accessible to employees but hidden from all maps and inaccessible to free-roaming animatronics. These rooms are where the murders are going to take place, and where Springtrap will be stuck for a long while.
I
So
feel like I should be taking notes, man. It's so weird how it's like, you know this stuff, but you just cannot, like, keep it all in your head at the same time.
A lot of this is pretty dangerous, honestly.
The back rooms were supposedly made for staff breaks, but anyone could see why a hidden room off map would be a dangerous thing to make.
I think here we should really just consider that William and Henry were adrenaline junkies. Or at the very least, a bit careless with safety until later events.
I mean, it was the 80s.
It was the 80s.
Yeah, we all know how safe everyone was being then.
Oh yeah.
When it's hot out, this is
If
the
you
perfect
have
place
not
to spend a day
seen-
with your family.
Now, we've
If
discussed
you've not
Fred.
seen the Class Action Park documentary, it is eye-opening. That little clip does not do it justice. That park is why I feel like Freddy's could have happened, honestly. That's a great reference.
William Afton has 3 known children, Michael, Elizabeth, and the third one who is known in the fan base as the Crying Child.
Now, I'm gonna be real. We believe we have been told the crying child's name, and once we
I have
get
a prediction. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and make the prediction now that they're gonna say that the crying child's name is Cassidy, which I know is not traditionally a masculine name, but this is just my prediction that perhaps their reasoning is going to be that the way the survival logbook works is Michael writes in it with red ink. The vengeful spirit writes in faded text, and the crying child manipulates the book itself. The name we get doesn't come from the faded text. The faded text asks us what our name is, and the word search is manipulated to spell out Cassidy. Does that make sense? That's my prediction. Because this is a thought that I've had in the past where I'm like, why would that be the vengeful spirit's name if that's not the way the vengeful spirit talks to us in the book? But it's also a puzzle, not necessarily where the words have been switched around for something else. It's a puzzle, that we have to solve using other elements throughout the book. But anyway, that's just my prediction. I can be wrong, but we'll go back to this whenever it comes up.
get to that part of the video, we will refer to them as such. Until we get there, though, we'll be
Wow.
initializing him as CC.
Okay.
Michael is
As most
definitely
do.
the oldest and seems to be in his tweens or early teens by around FNAF 4, which would place his birth around 1970. As for the other two, we don't have specific years or ages, however I do believe that CC is actually older than Elizabeth, contrary to fandom belief. The only
Okay, can I just say, so far, I love these two. That's parasocial. I don't mean it like that. I just mean, like, the things they are saying are tickling my brain. Like, I agree so wholeheartedly that Crying Child's older than Elizabeth. You don't even have to convince me. Here's what I need. I need for you to convince everybody else, because I feel attacked in the comments sometimes. Not literally attacked, but when people are just like, no, you're wrong. I'm like, are you Scott himself manifest as a YouTube comment? But they're saying a lot of things that I like, that I agree with. I feel like we're riding on the same brainwave. I'm excited to see, like, a turn. I want to be shocked.
The only hint towards her existence in FNAF 4 is when you can walk into her room, upon which her only toy is a broken mangle. FNAF 2 states that Mangle was created with toddlers in mind, and the toddlers are the ones who take him apart, which implies to me that Elizabeth is a toddler in 1983.
Oh.
This would explain her absence from the plot. She's at daycare or with her parents or parents.
With her parents? I don't know about that. What if the... What if the mom took Elizabeth and then the mom died, and then so she had to be under the custody of dad again, and that's when the Fun Times thing happens. Did I just solve it? I think I might have solved it. If she's a toddler and the mom is like, it's not safe here for the children, but can only take one, because this is a thing that really happens in real life. You guys might not know this, but there are times when a parent has to escape a very terrifying situation, and they do not get to take all their kids with them. It's just a fact of life. I'm not saying that it's preferred or that the children that are left behind don't feel something from that. I'm just saying it's a real thing that happens. So it would not be impossible for Elizabeth to have been taken by the mom, but then there is a custody battle. Tell me if this sounds familiar. And the mom loses the custody battle, and then Elizabeth is back in the house. Shut up. I just came up with that all by myself. I don't need to watch this video. Are they going to say that? I hope they say that. I don't know how I've never put all those pieces together before. I bet like 15 people out there have, and they're going to comment in this video being like, yeah, that was very obvious. We all knew that. We'd all been saying that the whole time. And I'm going to be like, okay, I missed the boat. Is that all right? I missed the boat. I'm late to the party, okay? I think that's fairly established. It's 2024. I'm starting making FNAF theories in 2024. I'm late to the party. I missed the boat. Give me some credit. I would never go up to a middle schooler who just learned algebra and be like, yeah, we all know that. Like, they just turned 13. They just learned. Somebody in the comments is going to be like, we learned algebra at 11. I don't care. I don't care when you learned algebra. The education system is a disaster, okay? I was just like, it depends on how long I ramble, guys. And I'm talking about algebra. Okay. Can I react to the video now? Can I allow myself to concentrate? We're not even 12 minutes in. I've been filming for over 45 minutes.
Or simply too young to be participating in any events.
Another long debate in the fan base.
No, guys. Guys, you don't get it. She's not there because she's with her mom. There is a Mrs. Afton, and she took to kids. She took to one kid. Oh, I think I'm right about that. I'm not even trying to be... I'm right about that, and that's why Vanessa has that memory.
This is which child died first.
I've got a whole Vanessa theory that you guys are not ready for.
We know Michael died last, but the other three are up in the air.
And I'm not ready for it either.
To be honest,
because
it's
I haven't finished
very
writing
likely
it.
that of the three left, Charlie, Cece, Elizabeth died last. Firstly, because, as mentioned, she was likely a toddler in 1983 and would need to age up a little more.
Yes.
We also know for certain, due to the blueprints of the Fun Times, that each robot was made with child luring and kidnapping in mind, and the scooper was made to remove remnants.
See, because people keep trying to say, if we could only figure out why the Fun Times would have been built before the Crying Child or Charlie die. And I'm like, you don't have to do that if you just don't let yourself believe that Elizabeth died first. It's just not the way that it happened. I'm so sorry. I know for so many people they're like, that makes more sense to me in like putting all the events in order way. But I'm like, it doesn't, because again, you have to justify this fun time stuff for no reason. When if William Afton is already a killer when he starts building the fun times, if you want to talk about the fun times being earlier in the franchise, I think it makes more sense that if the fun times existed before Fredbear's or Freddy, that they were costumes like we see the initial costumes for Freddy's kind of starting to come out, or Fredbear's. And then later, William turns, you know, these same characters into the fun times. I'm not coming for anybody's wig, okay? I'm really not. I think it's okay if you think that, but I just don't. And I'm not convinced.
Which Afton would have no idea about until he started experimenting with possession. This puts Elizabeth solidly behind the other two.
Midnight Motorist is a very controversial minigame, but with multiple clues pointing to it, it really seems like this is about William Afton. The secret minigame featured within Midnight Motorist is labeled in the files as Later That Night. Considering the look of the car and the rain texture, it's very likely to be referring to Charlotte's death.
I would
later
agree.
on the night Charlotte died, after William drove away, but while it was still raining.
The story shows him drunk driving to a place called Junior's that won't let him in. Likely a bar that's
What
keeping
is
him from
this?
getting more drunk.
The biggest proof of this is the guy standing outside, kicking him out. Pretty likely a bouncer. He has the power to keep him out and is already standing outside.
The important part we need to discuss here is Junior's, because it establishes that later the night Charlotte died, Fredbear's has been closed. Junior's was Fredbear's, closed down and turned into a bar. FNAF 2 establishes that Fredbear...
Okay. I just had a thought, and I just want to get it out of my head. One of the reasons people think that Elizabeth had to have died earlier in the timelines is because they know or feel that the sister location bunker existed earlier in the timelines, because the Fredbear plush is what William Afton is talking to Crying Child through while he's in that bunker. My counter to that, I don't really have a whole lot of opinions about the Fredbear plush insofar as it being William Afton's voice. There are reasons why I think that's not likely, but there are other reasons that suggest that it's almost certain. So I accept that it's a complicated issue and that I could be wrong about it. The bunker can exist before the fun times do. He can be down there experimenting with things, or he can have a secret place to be before the fun times exist. Maybe where he's trying to learn how to make animatronics as well as Henry. Maybe. I don't know. But that's my counter, is that the bunker does not have to have been built specifically for the Funtime animatronics. They could have come later. That's my only thing. Okay.
Fredbear's was the first location.
We're gonna go back.
FNAF 2 establishes that Fredbear's was the first location. This means that Charlotte died at Freddy's and not Fredbear's, like in the books, which can be backed up by Freddy being the animatronic serving cake in FNAF 2 and not Fredbear.
Whoa,
also means
hold on. I think that's a hard sell a little, that's Freddy and not Fredbear. That's a tiny little sprite, but we'll keep going.
By Freddy being the animatronic serving cake in FNAF 2 and
why
not
does
Fredbear.
he have the cupcake?
But it also means that if Fredbear's is closed, the bite has already happened.
Because I think
The
that
crime-
actually is another point of contention, is people are like, well, but Freddy has the cupcake when usually Chica has the cupcake. I feel like I've seen that. But it's also a real cupcake, right? That he's serving cake to the kids, not a decorative animatronic thing. Anyway.
Child was bitten at Fredbear's, and Fredbear's is closed by the time Charlotte died, meaning the crying child has to be bitten first.
And thus, the tragedy of the Afton family begins with Cece's trauma surrounding the animatronics. It has never been directly stated why exactly he fears them, though it should be noted that he seems to only fear the robots and not the characters themselves. After all, the plush animals are his friends, especially his Fredbear plush, which talks to and comforts him.
He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic friend Fredbear.
It's all but confirmed that Fredbear has his father's voice, as we see a similar Fredbear plush with a walkie-talkie in Afton's headed bunker.
The poster kind of insinuates that the fun times were already there because they're there with the thing. But I think that potentially... I have an issue with the Fredbear's voice being William Afton thing because we see William Afton in the restaurant at the same time that the Fredbear plush is talking to him. They'd have to be like pre-recorded messages that knew what Crying Child was going to do. Yeah, I think that the plush and the walkie-talkie could have existed and they just stayed there as, you know, things changed in the bunker. I'm just continuing on that thought.
Also note that the walkie-talkie near a Fredbear plush in the sister location's secret room implies that the bunker was active and in use during 1983, whatever the hell that means.
Why is CC afraid of the animatronics?
Agreed.
Originally, the hint given to the fanbase was what is seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. And many interpreted this as him seeing someone getting into a Freddy's costume and becoming terrified of what that can mean.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we have a different answer.
Oh, exciting.
In Night 4's minigame, we see that someone, presumably Michael, though it's never stated,
Yeah.
has locked Crying Child in a room filled with robot parts.
Mm-hmm.
This alone could cause a child trauma, surrounded by disconnected limbs, staring eyes, and torn wires.
But he's afraid of the animatronics before this moment in the game. And as far as I can tell, that these days happen chronologically. Anyway.
However, special attention should be given to the Fredbear suit. Its head is gone, and something is sticking out of its neck. To me, these sprites resemble brunette human hair. It's too blurry to tell for sure, but that brings up a question. Is the Crying Child locked in a regular parts and service room, or inside Fredbear's secret back room? And the back rooms were where the employees were told to go in order to bleed out and die. If the Crying Child was locked in there, only to witness someone enter in a suit, start twitching and bleeding out, and then die in front of him, yeah, that would sure traumatize the kid, perhaps in a way he couldn't explain to others. We also know from FNAF 3 that the Springlock suits were decommissioned following multiple simultaneous failures.
The issue is that those nights happen the issue is those days happen in order. The first, it says 5 days until the party, then 4 days until the party, he's locked in his room. Or he's getting out of his room. And it's 1 day till the party that he's locked in the closet. That happens so late in that game. He's already scared of the animatronics before that. You'd have to prove that these cutscenes are not in chronological order. Yeah, you'd have to just prove that they're not in chronological order, which is really hard because it says 5 days until the party, 4 days until the party, 3. You know what I'm trying to say? It seems to be telling you things that happen chronologically. And that is the last thing that happens before the day of the party. We'll get back to the video.
It should also be noted that during this time, neither Cece nor any of the other children appear to be going to school. This could place Cece's birthday on the bite at some time in the summer, or during an autumn or spring break. As we'll discuss later, the missing child incident, or at least the end
Definitely
of it, is slated to
summer, if
happen on
anything.
June 26, although the year is unspecified. This is something we should keep in mind when we get there.
Michael, as a teenage older brother going through his angsty phase, is not at all sympathetic to his brother's plight. Instead, he prefers to aggressively bully him, mainly via jump scares while wearing a Foxy mask, and presumably locking him into rooms so he doesn't have to deal with him. We also know that at one point he literally goes home without the Crying Child, leaving him at the place he hates the most. Cece doesn't seem very popular outside of his family either.
It's at this point I want to talk about William's actions. Quick trigger warning for discussion of child abuse for the next 2 minutes, but right now we've got William supposedly communicating through the Fredbear plush rather than actually, parenting his kids. While I can't speak on whether this was intentional at this point in the timeline, William is, at least through inaction, encouraging infighting among his sons.
Yes.
He doesn't seem to punish Michael for abandoning his brother, locking him in rooms, and scaring him to tears. The plush's words aren't even comforting. It's just, oh, your brother's coming. Did your brother do something again? Get jump scared to build character. The reason I bring this up is that now we're going to talk about common abuse tactics. Fun! When an abuser has multiple victims...
Oh, yeah, if he's talking to him. Oh, that's so manipulative. This is why, okay, I'm just going to say this. I think I've said this before, maybe in a live stream, but I don't know. I'm going to say it again here now. People have used William talking to Crying Child through the plush Fredbear as proof that he cares about his kids. And I think that they're touching on that here. If he's aware of how his other son is treating Crying Child, why is he abiding by it? You know he hates you. Your brother hates you. That is a wild thing for your dad to tell you about your brother. I grew up with siblings. We fought. It happened. Never would any of my parents have ever said, your brother hates you, your sister hates you. It's not okay to say things like that. If that's his dad, it's abuse. It's not comforting. I'm sorry, but it's putting him in the fray. It's not protecting him. It's not addressing your other child's clear behavioral issues. It's abusive. It's not okay. That is not proof that he cares about his kid. It is evidence to the contrary. It is just further evidence to the contrary. Anyway, moving on.
When an abuser has multiple victims, it's a very common tactic to turn them against each other. This is because simply, if the victims are fighting against each other, they don't have the time or energy to fight the actual problem, which is, of course, the abuser themselves. This can be
You will also notice this with the Republican and Democratic Party. I don't know if that'll make it in, but...
in either forcing the victims to compete for affection and good treatment, convincing each party that the others are the enemy, all that jazz. And once again, it may not be intentional. Not every—
Shout out to the Lion King 2 reference, okay? Big stinking shout out to the reference to Lion King 2 Simba's Pride. Can we get some hype in the comments for Lion King 2 Simba's Pride? Thank you.
Whether or not William was an abusive father prior to the bite of 83 is unknown, but it is something we should consider. Presuming he is the driver in Midnight Motorist, we know he later falls into abusive tactics, implying physical abuse, at the very least verbal. He does nothing to comfort Cece and does nothing to solve the root of the issue, which is Michael's behavior, which could also easily be read as a cry for help. It should also be noted that if William was abusive prior to the bite of 83, this does not exclude him from loving his children, or at least thinking he does. As hard as it is to understand, many abusers do believe that they love their victims.
Right.
They do not or cannot process the fact that their actions are causing their victims pain, and that their love is a desperate desire for control. That they see their victims as possessions rather than people. And with William's major control freak issues, this would be an easy trap for him to fall into, even without trying.
And I think he regrets that in that moment. He's so angry. In the movie. Do you think he regrets that? Look at his face.
Control freak issues, this would be an easy trap for him to fall into, even without trying.
I feel like he kind of looks regretful in that moment. Just like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Even if it's less about love and more about utility, I think he just, at the very least, realized he just neutralized an asset. And is like, how am I going to explain this one, guys? Anyway.
Whatever the reason, Michael's bullying escalates until Cece's actual birthday party, carrying him over to the stage and then shoving him in the mouth.
As simple
as
this
is, and then the mouth bites down.
That moment is still so powerful to me. The way that the bite happens and then everything stops. That's very good storytelling.
The bullies stop, staring in shock and horror, and the crying child stops moving.
This is the infamous Bite of 83, the date known due to an advertisement for Freddy and Friends on Cece's television, and the code to see the FNAF 4 cameras in Sister
Which
Location.
I must say, while I can believe that Scott used that to tell us what year it was, I just want it so well understood that, like, putting 1983 there, that would have stayed there no matter when that ran on TV. They wouldn't change the year that it is. It would just be the year that the TV show started. That's all I'm saying. Or like the year that it was established. I'm just saying.
We know from the final cutscene that Cece does not die right away. He slips into a coma where we hear Michael tearfully apologizing just out of his field of vision.
Not sponsored.
While Fredbear/William promises to put him back together, before we hear a flatline. So at some point, Cece was in a coma at a hospital, hence the flatlining. This can also be seen in Easter eggs during the FNAF 4 gameplay. The real question is, how long did this take? And more importantly, what happened between the bite and the death?
Yeah.
Well, the missing children incident.
Which makes the most sense to me. I do think it makes the most sense that an accidental death happens and then purposeful deaths happen.
The missing child incident forms the foundation of practically everything in Five Nights at Freddy's. It was canon even in the first game, where Cawthon wasn't even planning a story, let alone a decade-long lore-heavy franchise.
Oy.
Yet, much like many things in FNAF, information on it is scarce.
First of all, the books give the year it occurs as 1985. However, in The Truth About the MCI, Bon Swooch makes a very good argument for the game incident occurring in 1983 instead, which would put it very close to the bite. Nevertheless, we have no canon year, only vaguely 80s. We do have a specific day in...
I appreciate them saying that we do not have a canon year, just vaguely 80s. That's all.
though.
The first game tells us the story through rare, hard to...
Because, and I've said this before, but I will say it briefly again, because I don't know if you've seen my other videos. The reason that I'm glad that they're saying that it's not a specific thing, because, as they said, they're using the books as supporting evidence, not primary evidence. I have, in the past, made, I suppose, the error of suggesting that the missing children incident could have happened earlier than 1985, and people in the comments were like, it happened in 1985, and that's not up for debate because the 2-book series say that it happened in 1985. And I was like, I have been told that we're not supposed to use the books to solve the lore, that they're just supposed to be supporting evidence. So you would have to find a way to see 1985 in the games as a reference to when, you know what I'm trying to say, to if we're using the game evidence of the tombstones and saying that Charlie died last in the timeline definitively, 2 years happening in between Crying Child's bite and the missing children incident seems like a long stretch to me. It's possible. It's possible. It's possible. That is why I appreciate them saying that, because, as they said, other people have made very strong arguments to the contrary. And I think that we should be a little more open-minded about that sometimes.
Bought newspaper clippings, which confirm the incident occurred at Freddy's and that there were 5 missing children. And it's confirmed by this point that after they were lured away, the killer stuffed their bodies into the animatronic suits. However, something that is not brought up enough is what else the newspapers tell us, specifically the first one.
Kids vanish at local Peas area.
Oh my
Bodies
gosh.
not
Oh.
found. 2 local children were reportedly lured into a back room during the late hours of operation at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza on the night of June 26th. Police think that the suspect dressed as a company mascot to earn the children's trust.
3 things here that people don't
Dressed
bring
as
up
a
enough.
company
1,
mascot to earn the children's trust.
end of the incident, at the least, occurred on a specific date, June 26th. 2. The final 2 MCI were killed together. And 3. We know they're the last 2 because someone was identified and arrested the following morning.
The
Okay.
next newspaper then says that following this arrest, 5 children were eventually linked to the incident, and they have confirmation
not
that a man
found.
dressed in a mascot costume to lure them to a back room. The newspaper also says that the man was charged and convicted. Specifically, the headline says,
5 children now
Oh my gosh.
reported missing.
Oh, Lord
Suspect
almighty.
convicted.
He is
we know
loud.
that then Freddy's remained open for several years after, only to close when no buyers wanted to be associated with it.
So the other thing that I have seen people say, and I'm just throwing this in there, is that it's confusing because in later games it says nothing was ever proven in a court of law, but the word convicted says that something was proven in a court of law. You can't be convicted without it having been proven in a court of law. There's a contradiction there where it's like, did Scott Cawthon not know the difference between the words charged and convicted? Or is it being retconned in the new games? Or are they trying to trick people into thinking nothing was ever proven in a court of law when it was? Somebody went to jail, as far as FNAF 1 is concerned. Somebody went to jail. Or was convicted of a crime. I guess they could have been convicted of a crime and gotten no... I don't know how you're convicted of the disappearance of 5 children and then not sentenced to any jail time, but to me, it seems like somebody went to jail.
The last newspaper specifically refers to the MCI as the tragedy that took place there many years ago. We also know for a fact that Afton was the murderer. However, the question of whether he was the one arrested and convicted is a big one, because the
Yes.
answer to that has to be a no. He was
Exactly.
active in the company by 1987 at the least, and still the manager and robot designer for the fun times.
And just not in
Feeling
jail.
a convicted child murderer would get axed pretty quickly in the company.
But you
So-
have to remember that he would only have been convicted of the disappearance or the kidnapping of the children. They would not have been able to prove that he killed them necessarily. This newspaper article is not clear on what they were convicted of. So they could have only been convicted of kidnapping children, not the murders, which would have been potentially less jail time, or they could have worked out a deal. Anyway.
We know the names of 4 of the 5 children who disappeared. With additional information that Susie is Chica, which we'll get to in a minute, we can very easily place the tombstones along the heads and confirm that Gabriel possessed Freddy, Fritz possessed Foxy, Susie possessed Chica, and Jeremy possessed Bonnie. The grave up on the hill is presumed to be Charlotte Emily's, as the blurry name seems to match in length and shape, and it matches her puppet characterization of watching over the other children in death.
Yeah, I would
agree.
agree.
Other 2 missing children in the book series are a girl with long dark hair named Cassidy, and a young artsy boy named Michael Brooks. I feel like these graves were part of the confirmation that they take place in separate universes.
Yeah.
As if the 5th obscured grave was supposed to be Michael Brooks, that leaves out Cassidy. And if the 5th obscured grave is Cassidy, it leaves out Michael. The novels can't be used as a factual basis for all MCI information.
Right, exactly.
We don't know a lot about the missing boys, but we actually have a lot of information on Susie. For instance, in Ultimate Custom Night, a glitching withered Chica will claim,
I was the first. I have seen.
Why did I know that was going to be loud?
This, combined with her gravestone being first in Help Wanted 2, seems to imply that she was the first of the missing children.
Following Susie would have come the other children, and only recently have we been given a definitive order. In Help Wanted 2, when the player reaches the end of Princess Quest 4, they encounter the graves of all the children of the happiest day. Only by lighting them in the puzzle's correct order can the secret Bonnie mask be located. And with Susie as the first, that gives us an order. Chica Susie, Foxy Fritz, Freddy Gabriel, Bonnie Jeremy, Golden Freddy, and Puppet Charlie. This surprised the fanbase a lot.
But I'm sure you all noticed something interesting. When naming off kids for the gravestones, Connie didn't name Golden Freddy, did she? And many of you will be saying, but we have a name. Let's take a look at the security logbook. Released just a few weeks.
Am I right? Oh, is my prediction right?
The Five Nights at Freddy's security survival logbook is mostly a little puzzle collection, but holds some very important lore information. Firstly, it practically confirms that Michael Afton is the same character as Mike Schmidt, the first game's security guard.
Right.
He writes his name as Mike in the logbook, meaning he's a security guard named Mike, but he references enough specific sister location stuff to make it clear it's Michael Afton.
But why does he cross his own name out? Because that's in red ink, Mike, and then is crossed out. I would like it more if it was not the red ink that's crossing it out, because it makes it seem like Mike doesn't think his name is Mike. Anyway.
Throughout the book, there are 2 spirits that seem to be communicating with each other.
Yes.
One through faded text, scribbling notes in the margins of the pages, and another by altering the pre-existing text into their responses.
Yes.
We will call these spirits Faded and Altered for now. The thing is, we know for a fact that Altered is the crying child. Faded frequently asks if they recognize drawings of the crying child's toys and references his party specifically. Altered's responses, namely "the party was for me," line up with the questions and show that the second spirit is indeed our CC.
Yes.
As to who Faded is, well, on several pages, Faded wrote the phrase, "my name." One of these is specifically on a gravestone, and with the book's close release to FNAF 6, it was immediately supposed that this was revealing the name on the 5th gravestone.
See, yeah, because that's what I was saying earlier. It's just like, it is a puzzle that the faded text helps us decipher saying my name.
Are incorrect. Upon collecting all of them and going to the word search, the numbers can be used as coordinates to locate letters, which spell out, very clearly, Cassidy.
And its name is Cassidy. Remember that, guys.
Other phrases hidden in the word search, which are not supposed to be there, are "it's me," "who are you," and "what is your name?"
Very quickly, a conclusion was drawn by the entire fanbase, that being that Cassidy is the name of the 5th missing child, and the one stuffed into Golden Freddy. But in talking to the crying child, we also have more information on them that changes
sure, why not?
about this kid. So, having these 2 specific souls in one spirit causing problems on accident across the series has several parallels to Faded and Altered's conversations in the book. Specifically CC's I can't see, as specifically Andrew cannot see while Jake can. Meanwhile, Andrew is more in control of the endoskeleton's power supply. If, say, there were 2 spirits in Fredbear, then CC could be the one who couldn't see but was more in control of the suit, and that line could point directly to that interpretation. The 5th missing kid is definitely in Golden Freddy. We see this in Give Gifts, Give Life and Happiest Day. But if CC is in there too, they'd have to be stuck together. Thus it would work like Andrew and Jake's possession of the Stitch Wraith, with a difficulty maintaining control between it. It would also explain why Fredbear is so glitchy and mysterious. There's 2 confused souls in one body, and why he's got 2 glowing eyes in FNAF 3. There's 2 souls in there instead of just 1.
And with Andrew as the vengeful spirit interpretation, this also points to Cassidy being the vengeful spirit of the games' universe. If CC is Jake, then Cassidy is the Andrew parallel, and, well, UCN is very specific Golden Freddy imagery that would make Cassidy the vengeful spirit, angry on behalf of her fellow victims as well as herself. She is the one holding Afton in hell, and possibly the one who has to go back to stop the Mimic in the second arc, though that's very debatable. The Princess and Princess quest was labeled in the files as Cassidy, but this was later changed after being noticed. With other important file names being kept, such as Charlie Door, this seems to imply that it was never supposed to be viewed or wasn't meant to be a clue.
But then why would you call the Princess Cassidy? At any point? Why would you do that? I don't get it.
Well, this all brings up a certain question. Why Cassidy? Why is she the one William shouldn't have killed?
Ooh, what an interesting question.
Cause, like, he shouldn't have killed anyone, just in a general sense. So obviously the title isn't referring to morality, but to the fact that this victim was one who was inevitably going to come back and kick his ass. And not to sound like Mystic Hippo here, but what makes Cassidy so special?
True.
Some people infer from the Toy Chica cutscenes of UCN that her death was the last and therefore the most brutal, as Toy Chica's last kill is stated to be worse than the others. But that honestly doesn't make sense to me.
And it's represented by Pig Patch and not Golden Freddy.
The more violent to kill, the more vengeful you are? Is that the logic we're working with?
To me, the idea is that the vengeful spirit would have been so angry upon dying. Their agony was fused to the metal so specifically because of the spring locks, and so it was like a lot more powerful of an emotion, and they ended up having more control. I'm not describing it very well right now. I got super distracted because the neighbor's dog is like barking like crazy. There's construction outside. The dog wants to play, and the cats are like being tyrants right now. So I don't know. I have a point. I spilled my water. I can't make it right now. I hope that made even the slightest semblance of any sense at all. Let's keep going.
True, she could just be a more justice-oriented child than the others, but even then, what purpose does this serve narratively? Why is random kid number 5 the big good who gets to hold Afton in a torture chamber?
The missing kids, as you can infer by the fact they barely have names, are more plot devices than characters in their own right.
That's valid.
Which is fine. Sometimes in writing you just gotta focus more on other stuff than characters whose purpose is to be there and die. But then why is the 5th one so important?
Is the logbook telling us that Cassidy is communicating with the crying child? Or that Cassidy is the crying child?
So a little different. A little different than my prediction. But I think we can call that a bit of a W.
Stick with us. This is groundbreaking, I promise. The Cassidy we just discussed is not canon. I think a lot of us have forgotten this, but all of the above is speculation. None of that is ever spelled out in canon.
To be fair, very little is. For instance, we don't actually have textual confirmation that the crying child is an Afton. We just have to assume from his connections to Michael, Afton's connections to the FNAF 4 house,
what
and
have I
the Security
said?
Breach family of
That
staff
he's
bots.
not, potentially.
Afton bots. But the thing with Cassidy?
This little girl is not the vengeful spirit. She is not Fredbear's possessor. She's not even one of the missing children. The vengeful spirit, as will be discussed later, is someone else, and Fredbear's possessor, and the last missing child, is the crying child, Cassidy Afton.
And you might be wondering, he didn't go missing, he died? We'll get there. Let's look again at that logbook code. Yes, the hints on each page are from Faded's writing of my name. This led us all to believe that the name in the word search was, well, Faded's name. But Faded didn't make that code. Altered did. The coordinates are given.
You guys, it stopped recording. It stopped recording and I did not know. I lost like 10 minutes of video. I got really excited in that moment, so I'm sad that I lost that footage. Well, that it just didn't get recorded because I'm a dingus. But I was really excited because my prediction was right. Crying child's name being Cassidy because the word search is altered text, and I was excited, and I said that I wish that I had made a video on that when I first had that thought, but I don't even know if I was doing YouTube at that time. Either way, like, I think what I said was the presentation in this video is better than what I could have done, so I'm just super glad that somebody said it. That's where I was at. We're just gonna start watching from here again, and just know for the next about 10 minutes I have already seen this, and I'll still make my comments. But I've already seen this, so I am going to speed it up because I have other things to do today. This has been taking way too long.
Let's look again at that logbook code. Yes, the hints on each page are from Faded's writing of my name. This led us all to believe that the name of the word search was, well, Faded's name. But Faded didn't make that code. Altered did. Coordinates
Exactly.
are given via altered numbers.
This is where I got
With the
really
last couple being
excited.
provided by Michael Afton himself, as we can tell with his red pen. And the word search is all altered text. The name
Yes.
is found through altered text. And the other
Exactly.
hidden messages, it's me, who are you, what is your name, are altered. Faded does write on the next page over, and that would be a great opportunity for the authors to establish that this is Faded's name, but they don't. Faded instead writes, underneath a mirror, what do you see? And Altered responds, it's me, Cassidy.
Exactly.
But, you say, Cassidy was a different character in the books. She was a little girl. Yes, she was. And you know who else was in the missing child incident and in the novels? A boy named Michael. Michael Brooks, who isn't canon to the games either. Instead, Michael is William Afton's son. And so is Cassidy. Neither Michael nor the crying child are canon in the novel.
I really liked this point that they made. I really like that they're like, look, the two children who we don't see in the Silver Eyes novels are represented here, and that's how you can know that their names are the children's names, are Afton's children's names.
With Elizabeth appearing to be the only Afton kid in the trilogy, so their names were repurposed for the missing children. Michael Brooks and Book Cassidy are not the children who died in the games. Instead, they have the names of the missing Afton children in the narrative,
Yeah.
Michael and Cassidy Afton. Jeremy, being a missing child named in the games and not the books, when they were written around the same time, was cluing us to look at the names of the two who didn't appear in that image.
Not to mention that the Fazbear Frights parallel argument doesn't work. Jake and Andrew have specific sight and touch powers because of their placement in the body, so I can't see having a point towards CC
Here. Do they have captions? Yes, okay. Here's captions for you guys.
having less control than Cassidy is, as we say in Fazbear Frights, Stinger moot. Also note that the Stitch Wraith doesn't speak until it's only Jake in there. The only other time in these books we see two souls possess one animatronic, Rosie Porkchop in Together Forever, the animatronic very conspicuously uses plural pronouns to refer to themselves, your ladies in waiting, which is interesting seeing as Golden Freddy's only and very iconic line is in the singular.
I like
It's
this
me,
too.
not us, just me.
As for the
Exactly.
two spirits in game, the other glowing eye and Fredbear, that's
Okay, hold on. They're
not
gonna...
Cassidy. That's Charlie. Again, stick.
Okay, so they said that's Charlie, and I paused and I said...
As for the two spirits in
Initially, I was like, oh, I thought they were going to say that second light that you see over there is actually not a light source. It's just light bouncing off the other side of the mask or of the head, because you can see there's only one like bulb of light. Does that make sense? I'll try to circle it and explain what I'm saying. But like you can see the reflection of light in the other ones, and it would just make sense for that one to be brighter because it's just tilted more, maybe. That's what I thought they were going to say, but they said it's Charlie. So that's where that prediction was wrong.
game, the other glowing eye and Fredbear, that's not Cassidy. That's Charlie. Again, stick with us for a sec.
Think about the Happiest Day minigame. We see 6 spirits there, 5 missing kids, and Charlie, and when the game is completed, all 6 lights go out. Most people explain away the second Golden Freddy kid not being in Happiest Day by saying Cassidy is already torturing Afton in hell. But that means her soul hasn't moved on like the others have. So if her soul hasn't moved on, why does her light go out? The lights going out symbolizes them moving on. It's because she's not the 6th spirit. Instead, it's Charlie, the 6th person here, who moves on only after she's sure all of the other children have too. And why is she represented by a light in Fredbear's eye?
Really interestingly, in FNAF 6, when the puppet is finally trapped within an animatronic, it's within a Freddy animatronic with one visible eye, one golden eye, named after the left eye that is visible. Charlie...
So they're saying that this is a clue. Like Lefty's left eye being the golden eye is the clue. I didn't necessarily agree that this is like strong enough evidence necessarily, but I'm listening.
Is the left eye of that FNAF 3 cutscene. This is also reflected on her grave on the hill,
Like
being
you have
placed
to
behind the other
squint.
children and up to the left. The 6 spirits in Happiest Day were always the 4 missing children, Charlie and Cassidy Afton.
The glowing eye is the only hint in the games of 2 spirits in Fredbear. If it's supposed to represent CC and Cassidy, why are there no hints towards 2 Fredbear souls literally anywhere? Hell Pointed 2 really kicked off this interpretation in our minds. They have 6 graves, 6 poppets, and 6 Voltron figures. They could easily have had the Fredbear figure split in half, or 2 Fredbear poppets, or something like that. But they didn't. because there's only one Fredbear spirit. This, of course, brings up the question of who Faded Text is, if altered is...
So I think this is around where I was like, they're saying that Vengeful Spirit is not Cassidy. And they're saying that the only soul inhabiting Golden Freddy is the crying child. My question from here moving forward was, and is, then why in Ultimate Custom Night is Golden Freddy the one who's like twitching and fading into the background? The puppet's in the puppet and is not the Vengeful Spirit, theoretically. And Crying Child isn't the Vengeful Spirit. Cassidy isn't the Vengeful Spirit and is inside of Golden Freddy, but not really. Then why is the game of Ultimate Custom Night seemingly centered around this, but like Golden Freddy is the one fading into the background? That's my question moving forward. I hope that they answer it.
But they didn't, because there's only one Fredbear spirit. This, of course, brings up the question of who Faded Text is, if altered is Crying Child and Crying Child is Cassidy, who's Faded.
And I guess that the Faded Text would be the puppet, Charlie.
Michael, he writes in red pen, and given that he provides 2 of the
And
coordinates...
you're just gonna have to believe me that that's what I said.
...to assume he was aware of the spirits trying to communicate, making him a third party. Also implies that he recognized the second spirit was trying to spell out his name and was trying to help him remember it. The Faded Text then has to be someone who knows the Crying Child.
First of all, think about it. When does Mike fill out the logbook? He's definitely the security guard for the first game and the 6th, with the others a bit more up in the air. All we know is this book takes place after Sister Location, since he references it. And if entered as the Molten MCI, that would place this logbook also after the first game, because assuming the pieces of the original animatronics were in Fun Times, see Henry's He Took Everything from Them Again, then FNAF has to take place before Sister Location. It also implies that this is a more modern book, which would put it in the timeline of 3 or 6. FNAF 6, meanwhile, has a decent basis as well. This would tie into their close release dates and adds a bit more context to Michael drawing his own gravestone when asked where he will be in a year, since he knew where this restaurant would end up. So then...
I like that where they're saying that Michael wrote Where Will I Be in a Year, drew his own grave because he knew that he wasn't going to make it out of Pizzeria Simulator. I think that's interesting.
What does that leave us? With the candidates we have for Faded, we're pretty sure that this book takes place in FNAF 3. The Faded Text is most likely Charlie.
They're saying that he's thinking he's going to die during Fazbear Frights. Then.
Trying to prompt Cassidy to remember himself for the happiest day. If it takes place in FNAF 6, then it's probably William, who was trapped inside of Scrap Trap.
Because in FNAF 6, Scrap Trap is no longer just Spring Bonnie. As pointed out by Stormmister in his video, I Found a Reason for Afton to Look So Weird, the muzzle and feet of Scrap Trap are not Spring Bonnies. Rather, they are Golden Freddys.
This is where I kind of took a moment to be like, I think I would just need to watch Stormmister's theory to understand this, because while I agree that the muzzle of Scrap Trap looks different than the muzzle of just regular old Spring Trap that we see in FNAF 3, like from FNAF 3 to FNAF 6, Spring Trap, Scrap Trap, they look different from each other. I see that. I would just need to watch Stormmister's theory because I just don't think I get enough evidence here to support the idea that William is taking pizzas off of Golden Freddy and putting them on himself. That's my only hang up with this whole next
Stormmister points out it's very likely that these pieces were picked firstly to repair himself following the fire, but secondly, possibly, in hopes of taking away the animatronic mode's programming that makes him leave to follow audio cues, to give himself control back of his own body. It appears that after the FNAF 3 fire, Scrap Trap pieced himself together with some of Fredbear's pieces. And as we know from the Fun Times, moving the metal moves the remnant. When ripping apart Golden Freddy, whatever spirit was inside was put into Scrap Trap. And Scrap Trap may or may not have ever realized that.
So they're saying here, I believe, that now the Crying Child Cassidy's spirit also resides within Scrap Trap. This is the part where I'm just like having a hard time with. I'm still listening, but this is the part that I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with this stuff.
There's something else too. Scrap Trap would have known where Golden Freddy was at this time. In finding out where Golden Freddy was, we get more evidence that it did not hold a 5th missing child, but rather the soul of Crying Child only. Remember Night 4 of Sister Location? In it, we're trapped in a springlock suit by Circus Baby, who simply says it's from her old pizzeria and was never used, or at least, not in the way it was supposed to. Said springlock suit is never identified, but here's the thing. Sister Location happens right after Freddy's closes, as springlock suits were discontinued long before Freddy's closed. They were discontinued after those multiple simultaneous failures in 1983.
Right.
Why would they build another one for Circus Babies? I only one. If springlock suits were coming back into fashion, why only make one springlock and not the others? And if it's an old suit, we know Fredbear's only had two mascots, Spring Bonnie and Fredbear. They were the only springlock suits, and they were both used. But not at Circus Babies. If Elizabeth was a toddler when Fredbear's closed, she wouldn't remember those suits being in use. And Circus Baby herself barely has Elizabeth's memories at this point. Most of her consciousness is of what a robot itself saw. If Fredbear and Spring Bonnie were moved to Circus Babies, they wouldn't have been used, considering it closed day one after Baby scooped Elizabeth. They'd also be old suits, having been collecting dust for a few years now, so she wouldn't think they'd been used at all. At least, not in the way they were supposed to.
In
Right.
Help Wanted, we see 4 Endo-01 skeletons in the furnace, leaning heavily towards the molten MCI theory, which is that Afton broke the original animatronics down, melted them into remnant, and injected them into the Fun Times, which is why they're like that. But there's only 4 skeletons and no Golden Freddy suit, and no Spring Bonnie. He carted the original 4 over here, so why not them? They're not in the molten MCI, meaning we're in one of these 2 suits.
And Spring Bonnie's suit can't be the one we're trapped in, which only leaves one springlock suit we could be inside of.
Right.
Yes, that's right. In Night 4 of Sister Location, Michael Afton is shoved into the same suit that he shoved his brother into. He is in the Fredbear suit.
This is what I disagree with. They will address what I'm going to say, but at the time that I watched this video, my initial reaction was the way that that springlock suit that we're in Sister Location opens is not the same as how Golden Freddy or his counterparts would have opened. That's my like moment in this. They explain it. I don't agree with their explanation.
It's just big enough for one person to fit inside, but just barely.
And when they did that, I said, "Shut up."
Look at the faceplate. Compare it to Golden Freddy. The hole for the smile could easily fit the animatronic's muzzle. And more
I
importantly,
just
the suit
disagree.
has no eyes, just holes. Just like withered Golden Freddy. Eyeless, with
It
an open
doesn't have
smile as the
teeth
jaw falls.
either.
Now even compare it to the trailer footage from Into the Pit. Look at the eye shape. It's the same mask.
And
Well,
I disagree that this is the same eye shape. They're not quite the same shape. That's all I'll say. I understand, and also this is a pixel game image versus like a 3D render. Either way, I just disagree. I just disagree. I'm still listening, and I like where we're going, but I'm struggling with some of the stuff they have surrounding Golden Freddy.
Also, if you ask about the face opening up, the other animatronics do that too. The Fun Times aren't special.
You even see it there. It flips up. It doesn't slide open. Like, it's not from the center. It's just flipping up, and the mouth is staying down. So I just think it's
In an
different.
interview with Doggo, Scott Cawthon said something interesting about this suit.
In Night 4, when we're inside the suit, a lot of people wanted to know, whose suit is that?
Whose suit is that? I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to answer that for you.
That's fine.
That's going to have to remain a topic of discussion.
if it was just a new animatronic, why not just say that?
I
Because
do
it's not.
agree with
It's Golden
this.
Freddy, and knowing that would have spelled out one very important thing.
I do agree with the fact that, like, if it was not a suit that, or at least a character we may have known already, why would Scott not just say? Other people have made other theories about that suit that make more sense to me. I'll just leave it at that.
If Michael wasn't Golden Freddy for Night 4, then there is no body in there. There is no missing child inside. Fredbear was never meant for any random child. It was always meant for Cassidy Afton. Cassidy Afton was the 5th missing child.
First, let's once again bring up the order of deaths in Help Wanted 2. Susie Chica, Fritz Foxy, Gabriel Freddy, Jeremy Bonnie, then Golden Freddy Kid, then Charlie. Something we have to remember right now is that the crying child doesn't immediately die from the bite. He's in the hospital for some time. He's alive long enough for Michael and William to talk to him, and for William to promise to put him back together. We think that William took his son out of the hospital, either pulled a parent card and said he needs to be at home to recover.
And they said here, random note, but we recently looked up what happens if you lose your frontal lobe / prefrontal cortex, and it turns out they do send you home like really quickly because family and familiar environments are essential to the recovery period. Also, if you lose your entire frontal lobe, you may be very paralyzed, or you get very paralyzed, so it's possible that Cassidy was out of the coma but unable to move on his own.
What we are sure about is that while CC is in his fun little coma, William starts killing, because he's practicing, learning how to put them back together.
Yes.
In Tales from the Pizzaplex, it's shown that the material of Remnant, at least the owner's own, has healing properties.
So this was the other thing that I noted, where we have similar ideas about the fact that William's killing these kids are part of the experiments. He doesn't just like kill the kids and stuff them in there all at once, and it's over time he's trying to like perfect that, get it right, so that he can potentially put his kid back together. Narratively, it makes more sense that Charlie would die, get possessed by the security puppet. William would see that and then try to recreate that for the sake of being able to reanimate, and potentially his son would be a part of that. But I'm on board still with he has to kill another kid to experiment on their brain functionality or something. Like, he's not really thinking about the robots, but he puts her in the robot to hide her. Chica starts acting weird, and then, they go on to keep he goes on to keep doing this to see what happens and if he can perfect it. That's all. I'm sorry, I said it so much better the first time, but...
If he knew or was discovering this, maybe that's what he was after.
After shoving Susie into Chica to hide her, Chica starts acting strange. While Susie isn't fully possessing the suit, it's still being a bit erratic, twitching at random intervals. Perhaps her agony is already inside of it, keeping her pain inside while her remnant wanders. As seen in Fazbear Frights, when Susie wanders her home all day, then disappears with the spirit of Chica at night.
I do like this
Chica's
connection.
still acting weird. So William tries the same thing with Foxy. Kill a kid, shove them inside. Henry has set up a safeguard, a security puppet to make sure children don't leave the area, and specifically to make sure his own daughter, Charlotte, is safe. After one disappearance, you can't have any more, can you? But his flaw here is thinking that someone is luring the children out of the location. William is working on the inside.
Exactly.
He kills Fritz. He's gotta try again. Only this time...
And this is the moment that I realized that I was not recording, so we can go back to normal speed now. This is kind of where, like, stuff from the movies and the books that hasn't necessarily been explored in the games, but kind of has. I saw somebody say recently, and I can't remember who it was, I'm so sorry, I watched too many YouTube videos. I'm pretty sure it was Rye Toast. Every time I say this, I'm gonna be like, I'm pretty sure it was Rye Toast, because I watch a lot of their videos, very similar to dual process theory, it seems. But they were talking about they've never seen an instance of the animatronics being controlled by William, or William having some level of control over the animatronics in the games. I think that Foxy Go 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 might be that, but I don't know. And it's and that's confusing. Anyway, and I don't have a full explanation for that, but I think that the way that they're kind of explaining it would make sense, that he then starts using the other animatronics to help lure the kids. That's just my thought process. But anyway, that's just a random thought that I had, but that was the last thing I was going to say when I looked over and saw that I wasn't recording. So now we're back. And it only took me 25 minutes.
Now that the puppet didn't work, we have cameras.
The final night, he lures Gabriel and Jeremy together. The last two to go were Freddy and Bonnie, which tracks. In every game, in every restaurant, it's you and me together forever and ever. Of course they died together. And when he killed them...
That literally does make sense, though, and I really do like that.
When we look at Fredbear's twitching cutscene in UCN, the soundtrack titles the scene Void. Pay attention to the way this moves. First off, it's an undamaged Fredbear. You know where else we see this twitching? In the original trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's 3 with Springtrap. Showing possession, right? Perhaps. You know what else it may be showing? Let's look at a very specific instance in the books. In Fazbear Frights 1:35 a.m., in the short The New Kid, when Kelsey gets into the Golden Freddy suit and gets spring-locked.
Yep.
And the sound wasn't the bad part. The really, really bad part was the way the suit started jerking in a spastic, horrific dance. It looked like the moth-eaten, mildew-blotched gold bear was convulsing, but it wasn't the bear. Devon knew it wasn't the bear. It was Kelsey. It kind of pulsed, like it was a large...
And it might be worth noting that Kelsey is a name that can be boy or girl in this instance. You know what I mean? Like, similar to Cassidy.
Bloody heart getting in its last beats.
This shot isn't just showing that the suit is possessed. The other suits are possessed, but don't twitch like this, because they're not spring-lock suits. The same twitching can be seen in the film when William is in the back room, dying from his spring-locking. This shot and the FNAF 3 shot are shots of someone being spring-locked. And the Void shot of Golden Freddy is Cassidy's spring-locking. Cassidy was placed into the Golden Freddy suit, and whether intentionally or not, spring-locked. This kid was taken off of his life support, put into his worst nightmare, and made to suffer one of the most horrific deaths imaginable. And when it doesn't move after long enough, William concludes that it didn't work. Which, oh shit, it, quote-unquote, didn't work. All of this was for nothing. But now he has a whole new problem. He can't just say Cassidy finally died in his coma. Look at his body. If it hadn't been completely ripped to actual shreds like in Together Forever, it's mangled beyond belief. Not a single person is going to look at that and think those were from the coma.
William panics. He'll leave the other children where they are to rot in the suits, but not his son.
Are they going to say that he, depending on the order of events, that's the mound in Midnight Motorist? Crying Child was killed in a springlock suit, which I like. That's what I was thinking earlier when they were saying, like, oh, this suit was specifically made for Crying Child, and I was like, then why is his body in there? But so it seems like they are explaining it, that William put him in the suit as a paralyzed, coma-ridden child, potentially aware but paralyzed. He got spring locked. Then William's like, oh, I can't leave this body in here because it's my kid. He thought that it would cause the child to possess the animatronic, but he panics. I'm trying to make sure I understand everything that they're saying.
He takes the body out. He removes Cassidy and puts his body in a box. To hide his failure, his horrible crimes, and to put his son somewhere he might be able to grab him should he actually figure out how to put him back together, he buries his son in an unmarked grave in the woods.
The strange pile
Yes!
of dirt in Midnight Motorist.
Got it.
The next day, then, the police search the Freddy's security cameras for Gabriel and Jeremy. They see them being lured away by someone in a spring Bonnie suit, and come to one conclusion. It has to be one of the owners.
Right.
Now that the Springlock suits are decommissioned, they're the only two who would know where the suits are and how to use them.
But when they get to William, he tells them that not only was he definitely totally home all night, but his son is missing too. His son, who was sick and dying, disappeared, or got kidnapped. How awful. How tragic.
Trying to call Crying Child part of the missing children's incident and the 5th missing child, I think is the... Maybe the issue is in how we're defining the missing children's incident. Maybe that's what it is.
And so, who gets arrested? Henry. He let Cassidy slip into the missing child incident, hiding not only the fact that he knew where Cassidy's body was, but that he himself was the killer. He can't be the murderer now that he's a victim himself.
That is a thing in the real world too. You'll find that a number of instances will occur where a parent has done something and then reports their child missing, and it's really hard for detectives or police or whatever to get to the point where they're investigating the parent themselves, because you don't initially want to suspect a parent in a situation like that. Anyway. It's a thing that happens. That's all I'm saying.
So, Henry, the only other person who can operate the Springlock suits, is arrested.
And it would make sense why he wasn't around when Charlie died, if that's the order of events they're going with.
Henry unwillingly took the fall for William in the missing children incident.
Right.
And, following his arrest, what happens? His daughter is shunned by the other kids. Whether they exactly know or understand what's going on or not, they know her dad used to be in charge of the place and is now under police custody.
Now Henry is imprisoned, and can't be there for her. The security puppet is trapped in its box, and the kids lock Charlie outside, not wanting the killer's daughter at their party. Then William drives up.
He murders Charlotte Emily in the alley. He's not hiding her body, though. He doesn't care anymore. He just leaves her outside in the rain and drives home.
In this, he may have saved his own ass once again. When Charlotte is inevitably found, she won't be chalked up to a victim of the same killer as the MCI. The death is completely different. She wasn't lured away, and her body was found.
Later that night, Afton drives home. He tries to see Michael, only to find he's escaped to that place. And what is that place? The gravesite.
Yeah, that's what
How
I
Michael
would think in
discovered the
this
unmarked
telling.
grave is unknown. Perhaps he saw on the night his dad buried it, sneaking after him when he stopped to grab a shovel. Maybe he saw his dad visit once and started to piece together what it was. Or maybe, just maybe, Cassidy was trying to show him.
Yeah, that's more what I would think. In this instance, it makes sense that in this case, Cassidy was showing up, trying to let him know what had happened.
Unbeknownst to William, his plan had worked. Cassidy's soul was now tied to Golden Freddy, but it wasn't like the other souls. It was confused, volatile, because the soul was separate from the body now. The body wasn't in Golden Freddy, it was buried in the woods.
Right.
Golden Freddy appears outside of Michael's window and beckons him to find him. Think of the scene in the 2023 film where Golden Freddy's ghost is present enough to kill Aunt Jane, but also gets into the house without breaking the door, if you notice. It vanishes like it's not a real suit, but sure hits like one. In the same way, the game's Fredbear ghost works like this. It appears outside Michael's window in a somewhat stable function, while the actual suit is still sitting in a back room.
Michael's starting to suspect that his dad may not be as innocent as he appears. And he starts seeing apparitions of Golden Freddy and starts following it.
Right.
Maybe he knows it's a ghost, maybe he thinks it's a manifestation of his own guilt. But he follows it and goes to a place where his father was digging one night and tries to find his brother's grave.
William's caught Michael near the grave before, and he knows Michael suspects something is up. So, knowing Michael ran off to that place again, he vows that he's going to regret it.
The only thing that they don't explain in that is who's sitting on the couch. It's the only thing they don't explain. Like, if it's Mrs. Afton, that's confusing for other reasons. But anyway.
The box holding Michael's brother, left forgotten, for now. As for Michael, well...
Let's talk about the nightmare gas!
Not this time. That'll be for next week. Because I have to wrap this up. I expected this filming session to be like 2 hours, but it's been 3.5. I really like this so far. My main things that I agree with are that Crying Child is Cassidy. I also agree with the idea that Henry took the fall for the missing children's incident, because I've also theorized about that in the same video where I was talking about the potential of Crying Child being Henry's child, just being adopted into the Afton family after that fact, or as a step parent. I agree with a lot of the characterizations of these characters, though I would say, even if it's not like the correct timeline, and I will concede that, or I can concede that, I still think it would narratively make more sense for Charlotte to have been killed after Crying Child, and then William is like, oh, you can possess that animatronic, and then go from there with the missing children's incident. However, I understand the other timeline. The things I simply am really not with is the idea that the spring lock suit that we're in sister location is Golden Freddy. I have a hard time with that. I explained why in the video, so I won't go back over it, but overall, I'm really excited to see what the rest of this video is about. I'm really grateful that you guys pushed me to do the reaction to this, because it ended up helping me have more time to work on my other scripts. We are 2 subscribers away from 2,000 as I am recording this video. If I have surpassed 2,000 by the time that the video goes out on Friday, woo! Celebrate. Thank you all so much. Your support has been incredible. Go ahead, watch the rest of Dual Process's video if you want to, and then when I'm reacting to the second part of it, you'll have already seen it if you haven't already seen it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, consider subscribing, turn on bell notifications so you can become a part of the nervous system. You know what, while I'm here, I'm gonna go ahead and subscribe to Dual Process so we can all do it together. Subscribe, like the video, turn on bell notifications. Those are all the things I would love for you to do for me. You saw it, it was that fast, it was that easy. If you would like to financially support the channel, consider becoming a Spark. They're $1 channel memberships. It's just to financially support the channel, and you get some behind the scenes photos and posts about my upcoming uploads and things like that. I'll be back next week, but if you can't wait, there are videos on the screen right now just for you. Okay, bye! Why, SpongeBob, why?